I want to tell you about the moment I stopped doubting myself. It was a Tuesday evening in November. My husband was working late again, which he had been doing 3 or 4 nights a week for 7 months. My 2-year-old son was asleep. I was sitting at the kitchen table with a glass of wine I was not drinking, and a spreadsheet I had been building for 6 weeks. The spreadsheet had dates, times, stated reasons, and verified facts. Dates, he said he was working late. Times, his location data, which I had never told him I could see, showed him somewhere other than his office building. Stated reasons like client dinner or project deadline. Verified facts pulled from his work calendar, which he had shared with me 2 years earlier for family scheduling, and never thought to unshare. By Tuesday evening in November, I had 43 entries. 43 occasions over 7 months where what Ryan told me did not match what I could verify. I closed the laptop. I picked up my wine. And I thought, I am not crazy. I was never crazy. My name is Maya. I am 34 years old. My husband Ryan is 36. Our son Eli is now 3. We are divorced. Ryan married someone else 8 months ago. Her name is Priya. She was his coworker. He had been with her for 14 months before I found out. He had been lying to me every single day of those 14 months. And his mother had known for at least 6 of them. Let me give you the full picture. Because the part about Ryan's mother is the part that still keeps me awake some nights. Not the affair. The affair was Ryan's betrayal. But his mother's role in it was something else. Something that requires its own accounting. Patricia is 62 years old. She lives 25 minutes from us, and she was, for the first 5 years of my marriage to Ryan, one of the most consistent presences in my life. She attended Eli's birth. She sat in the waiting room for 11 hours. She was the first family member outside of Ryan and me to hold him. I had genuinely loved her. I have thought of her as a second mother in the truest sense of the phrase. I want you to hold that fact. I want you to hold it against what I am about to tell you. In the 4 months before I confronted Ryan, I had been telling Patricia that something was wrong. Not telling her. I thought he was having an affair. I did not say that out loud to anyone. But I told her he had become distant. That he was pulling away. That I felt like I was losing him and I did not understand why. Patricia listened every time. She was warm and present, and she said things like all marriages go through phases. And Ryan loves you and Eli more than anything. And sometimes men get overwhelmed at work and pull inward. And it is not about you. She said those things to my face while knowing. She knew. She had known for 6 of those months. I know because of the text messages. But I am getting ahead of myself. The confrontation happened on a Friday in December. Not because I had planned it for that day. Because I made a mistake in my containment. And Ryan saw something on my laptop that told him I had been tracking him. He came to find me in the kitchen, and he said, "Are you checking up on me?" And I said yes. He said that was a violation of his privacy. I said, "Then tell me where you were on October 14th between 6 and 10 p.m. Because you told me you were at a client dinner and your location showed. You at a residential address in Westfield." He went very still. I said, "I have 43 of those." He sat down. I said, "I am going to ask you one question, and I need you to tell me the truth." He said, "Okay." I said, "Are you having an affair?" He said yes. He said he was sorry. He said he had not meant for it to happen. He said it had started as a friendship. I let him talk for 4 minutes. Then I said, "Her name is Priya." He looked at me and I could see he was calculating how much I knew. I said, "I know about Priya. I know you have been with her for 14 months. I know she is your coworker. And I know that at some point your mother found out and said nothing to me." He said, "My mother does not know about this." I said, "Ryan, I have 43 entries. Do not insult the spreadsheet." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said she found out in June. I said it is December. He said she wanted to stay out of it. I said she sat with me in her kitchen 4 times between June and December, and told me I was going through a hard patch, and that you loved me and Eli more than anything. Ryan did not say anything to that. There was nothing to say. I told him to sleep somewhere else that night. Then I called my sister. Then the next morning I called a divorce lawyer. The lawyer's name was Ms. Chun. She was efficient and precise, and she told me that in our state, in a divorce with a minor child, the standard presumption was shared custody unless there was cause to deviate. She said financial settlement would be based on asset division and Ryan's income. She said the affair itself was not directly relevant to division in our no-fault state, but that any financial misconduct during the marriage, meaning money spent on the affair, could be factored as dissipation of marital assets. Ms. Chen asked me to compile a full accounting of any expenses I could identify as affair-related. I went back to the spreadsheet. I added a column: restaurant receipts on credit cards I had access to, hotel charges I found when I requested our shared card statements. A weekend in March he had told me was a work conference. The accounting took 3 days and the total was significant enough that Ms. Chun said it would meaningfully affect the settlement conversation. We filed in January. Ryan retained a lawyer. The process was what divorce processes are: long and expensive and miserable in a specific way that has nothing to do with love and everything to do with assets and calendars. And who gets the couch? I'm not going to take you through every step of it. I want to tell you about Patricia. I called Patricia the morning after the confrontation. I told her I knew. I told her I knew she had known since June. I told her I needed to understand how she had sat with me 4 times and said the things she had said without telling me the truth. Patricia cried. She said she had been in an impossible position. She said Ryan was her son, and she could not betray him. I said you could have stayed out of it entirely. You chose not to. You chose to come to my home and sit at my table and tell me my marriage was a normal rough patch when you knew your son was conducting a 14-month affair. Patricia said she had thought it would end on its own. I said it did not end. I ended it when I found out the truth myself. She said she was sorry. I said sorry is a word. I need you to think about what you did to me across those months. She cried more. I said I am going to say something, and I need you to hear it. You were the person I called when I felt like I was losing my mind. You told me I was not. You told me it was going to be okay. You held my hand at your kitchen table and looked me in the eye, and said things that were designed to keep me in place. Whether you meant it that way or not, that is what you did. And I cannot trust you with my son after that. Patricia said, please do not take Eli from me. I said that is not what I am doing. I said Eli will have a relationship with you if he chooses one when he is old enough to understand the history. But I am not going to facilitate that relationship right now. I am not going to bring my son to someone who looked me in the eye for 6 months and lied. She said she had not lied. She had just not told me. I said there is a name for not telling someone the truth when you know it, and when your silence is causing them harm. She said she did not want to hear that word. I said I know you do not. I said goodbye and I hung up. Patricia attended the mediation through Ryan's side. She did not speak to me. I looked at her once across the table and she looked away. Whatever she had been to me, the second mother, the woman who held Eli first, it was now a different thing entirely. A witness to the deception. Someone who had sat at my kitchen table with my son on her knee and let me believe the problem was inside me. During the divorce proceedings, Ryan's lawyer raised the question of Patricia's involvement in childcare as a factor in the custody discussion. Ryan argued that expanded custody time would allow Eli to maintain his relationship with his paternal grandmother. Ms. Chen addressed this directly. She presented the documented timeline of Patricia's knowledge and her conversations with me during that period. She presented 2 text messages we had obtained through discovery in which Patricia had written to Ryan, advising him to be more careful about his schedule, because Maya was getting suspicious. Those text messages, in Patricia's own words, she had not just covered for him passively. She had actively advised him on how to avoid detection. Ms. Chan argued that this demonstrated a pattern of deception toward the primary caregiver, and that expanding Ryan's custody in a way that substantially increased Patricia's access was not in Eli's best interest given this documented pattern. The judge agreed. Ryan received standard parenting time. The clause about Patricia was included in the final order. Any extended stays or overnight visits with paternal grandmother required advance written consent from both parents. In practice, this means me. She has seen Eli 4 times in the past year. All 4 times in Ryan's presence. All 4 times for a maximum of 2 hours. She sends him birthday cards that Ryan reads to him. Eli is 3. He asks for his nana sometimes in the way that 3-year-olds ask for things they half remember. I tell him Nana loves him, and that he will see her when the time is right. I am not lying. Those things are both true. Ryan and Priya got married 8 months ago. I found out through Eli, who came home from a visit talking about Daddy's wedding and the pretty dress and the cake. I sat with Eli on the couch and I let him tell me everything about the cake. And I said that sounds like a really fun day. And he said it was. Then I put him to bed and I went and stood in the kitchen for a while. And I felt something that I cannot fully name. Not grief exactly. The grief had already happened. Something more like the specific sensation of a chapter closing that you had known for a long time was ending, but that still requires a moment when it finally does. Then I made tea and watched a show and went to sleep. I woke up in the morning and Eli asked for banana pancakes and I made them and we ate them together at the kitchen table, and I thought about the spreadsheet, about the 43 entries, about the Tuesday evening in November when I closed the laptop and picked up the wine and thought, I am not crazy. I was never crazy. I would do it all again the same way. The documentation, the lawyer, the quiet accumulation of truth before the confrontation, the call to Patricia, the text messages and discovery, every single step, because the alternative was continuing to believe that the problem was inside me, continuing to accept the version of reality that Patricia had been paid in family loyalty to maintain. I would not have done that. I'm not built for that. And neither are you if you're reading this and something in you recognizes this story. You are not crazy. Trust the spreadsheet. Here is my question for you. If you discovered your mother-in-law had known about your husband's affair for 6 months and had actively helped him hide it, would you cut her off completely or give her a path back to your child? Taytaesh or nah? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. What I have not told you yet is what happened in the 3 months before I started the spreadsheet. Because the spreadsheet was not the beginning. The beginning was a Sunday afternoon in May when I noticed something small and said nothing. Ryan had come home from what he said was a run. He had been running more lately, which I had attributed to a New Year's resolution that had finally stuck in month 5. He came in through the back door and went straight upstairs. I heard the shower. When he came down, he was in clean clothes and he smelled of his own soap. And he sat beside me on the couch and asked how my afternoon had been. And I told him. And as I told him, I looked at his face and something was wrong. Not wrong in a way I could name. Wrong in the way a room looks the same but feels different, like something has been moved and put back slightly off-center. I could not identify what I was seeing. I only knew I was seeing something. I did not say anything. I filed it away in the back of my mind and went back to our ordinary Sunday and made dinner and put Eli to bed, and we watched something and went to sleep. That was May. By July, the small wrongness had accumulated into something larger. He was more careful about his phone. He left rooms to take calls. He was present in the mechanical way of someone who has rehearsed presence rather than feeling it. He was kind to me in the specific way of someone who is managing guilt. I recognized this later. I could not name it at the time. I started asking Patricia in July if she had noticed anything different about Ryan. I told her he seemed distant. She said he was probably stressed at work, that he had mentioned a difficult project, that she would talk to him. She seemed completely normal. She asked about Eli. She asked about my work. She poured me tea, and we sat in her garden and everything felt like it always had. I drove home and thought maybe I was wrong about the Sunday in May. Maybe the room had not been moved. Maybe I was imagining the off-center quality. Maybe the problem was inside me. That phrase, the problem is inside me. I said it to myself so many times across those months. Every time I felt something was wrong and could not prove it. Every time I looked at Ryan and felt the gap between us that he was pretending not to exist. Every time I talked to Patricia and walked away feeling reassured, but not actually reassured, just quieted. The problem is inside me. It was not inside me. It was in the spreadsheet. 43 entries, each one a small stone in the path from that Sunday in May to the Friday in December. I built that path one entry at a time while believing I might be wrong, while hoping I was wrong, while wishing with everything I had that I was wrong, and Ryan was just tired, and Patricia was just loyal, and the off-center feeling was just anxiety. I was not wrong. Patricia was not just loyal. The off-center feeling was not anxiety. It was perception. Accurate, reliable, patient perception that I have been trained to distrust for 7 months. Trust your perception. That is the only thing I know with absolute certainty from all of this. When your body tells you the room has moved, believe it. Even when everyone around you says the room is fine. Even when the person you trust most sits in her garden and pours you tea and tells you everything is fine. Believe your body. Build the spreadsheet. Find out what is true. There is something about the text messages in Discovery that I want to explain more fully, because I think it is the most important part of this story in terms of what people need to understand about the role Patricia played. There were 2 messages. The first was from the 4th of August. Ryan had texted his mother saying, "Maya has been asking questions and seems like she is getting suspicious. Do you think I should come clean?" Patricia had responded, "Not yet. Give it time. These things often resolve on their own if you are more careful." More careful. She had advised her son, who was conducting a 14-month affair, on how to conduct it more carefully so that I would not find out. She had received that message and not called me, not said anything. She had instead come to my home 2 weeks later and sat with Eli on her knee and told me marriages go through phases and that Ryan loved me and Eli more than anything. The second message was from October. Ryan had texted, "I think she might be tracking my location somehow." Patricia had responded, "Then you need to have a conversation with her about trust before she does." He had forwarded this message to Priya, asking if she thought Patricia was right. Priya had responded, "Your mom is smart." He had not had the trust conversation with me. That he had started being more careful about his location, which is why entries 30 through 43 in my spreadsheet were harder to verify than the earlier ones. He had corrected his pattern after his mother told him to be careful. Ms. Chan presented these messages to the mediator and said plainly, "This is not a grandmother who was caught in the middle. This is an active participant in the concealment." The mediator read both messages. She did not comment, but her expression changed in a way I noticed. The clause in the final order was specific. It did not say Patricia could not see Eli. It said access required my written consent. That was the outcome of those 2 text messages. 2 texts and a 14-month affair, and 6 months of kitchen table conversations, and I'm going to say something now that I mean completely seriously. I am glad I built the spreadsheet. I am glad I requested the discovery documents. I am glad that the truth of what Patricia did is sitting in a court order, rather than in my memory alone. Because memory is malleable and grief softens edges. And there would have been moments, and there have been moments where I questioned myself, where I thought maybe I was too hard on her, where I thought she was just trying to protect her son, and that is not so different from what I would do for Eli. And in those moments I can go back to the messages, Not yet. Give it time. Be more careful. Those are not the words of a woman caught between loyalties. They are the words of a co-conspirator. I will not forget that. The messages will not let me. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I started therapy. Not crisis therapy, but the kind that is about building something from a cleared space. My therapist, Dr. Hannah, is careful and smart. And she said something in our 3rd session that I have been thinking about ever since. She said the most damaging thing that happened to you was not the affair. Affairs are a betrayal between two people. What happened to you was a coordinated management of your perception of reality by multiple people across a sustained period of time. She said there is a clinical name for this pattern. She said it involves a target being made to doubt their own accurate perceptions while the people around them maintain a false reality. She said the spreadsheet was not paranoia. It was the rational response of a perceptive person who had been told their perceptions were wrong, and who had found a way to verify them outside the system that was distorting them. That framing helped me, because the thing about being gaslit, and I will use that word directly because I have earned the right to use it. The thing about being gaslit is that it does not announce itself. It does not arrive saying, I am going to make you doubt reality. It arrives as love, as warmth, as a mother-in-law who sits in her garden and pours you tea, as a husband who is kind in the way of someone managing guilt, as reassurance that the problem is inside you. And then one day you close the laptop and look at 43 entries and you understand that the problem was never inside you. It was always outside you, in the choices of specific people who decided their interests were worth your disorientation. I am no longer disoriented. I know exactly where things are. And so does the court order. I want to tell you what Eli said to me on a random Wednesday morning 3 months after the divorce was final. We were eating breakfast. He was eating cereal with the intense focus that 2-year-olds bring to cereal, fishing out the star-shaped pieces first, because those were his favorites. Out of nowhere, he said, "Mummy sad." I said, "No, baby. Mummy is okay." He said, "Mummy sad before." I said, "Yes. Mummy was sad for a while." He said, "All better now." I said, "Yes. All better now." He found another star piece and ate it with great satisfaction, and moved on to talking about the dog next door. He was 2 years old. He had perceived the period of sadness, and he had perceived its ending. His perception was accurate. His perception had always been accurate, because it had not yet been trained to doubt itself. I thought about that for the rest of the day. The untrained perception of a 2-year-old who could tell when his mother was sad, and when she was better. Not confused by reassurance, not distracted by tea and warmth, just accurate. I want to be that accurate. I am working on it. Dr. Hannah says I am making progress. She says the spreadsheet was the first act of trusting my own perception, and that every act since has been another one. The divorce was one. The discovery motion was one. The court clause about Patricia was one. This video is one. Every time I choose to trust what I actually observed over what I was told to observe, that is the work. It is quiet work. Mostly it happens inside, but sometimes it shows up on a Wednesday morning over cereal when your 2-year-old tells you Mummy is all better now, and you realize he was right. You are all better now. Not completely. Not in every room of you, but in the room that matters. The room where you can look at the kitchen table and know it is yours and the person across it is yours, and nobody in that house is managing your perception of anything. That room is mine now. I am keeping it. One more thing. There is a version of this story I almost told. The version where I confronted Ryan in month 4 instead of month 7. Where I went to Patricia in August when she first covered for him, and I said, "I know you are lying to me." Where I skipped the spreadsheet and the documentation and acted on raw feeling, and came away without proof, without discovery, without the text messages, without the court clause. In that version, I would have had the pain, and none of the receipts. Ryan would have denied everything. Patricia would have said I was unstable and suspicious. And the narrative she had been building about my difficulty would have had an emotional confrontation to point to. The judge would have heard a wife who accused her husband based on a feeling, and a mother-in-law who sadly but correctly identified instability in the marriage. In that version, I lose. Not completely, but differently, more expensively, more confusingly, without the 43 entries to anchor me. I tell you this not to say you should always wait. I tell you this to say that documentation is power and patience is sometimes the bravest thing you can do. The quiet accumulation of truth in a spreadsheet, while you continue to appear normal and function, and make banana pancakes and attend Patricia's kitchen table gatherings is one of the hardest things I have ever done. It required me to contain my own pain while it was happening, in order to have something real to show at the end. It was worth it. Every single entry was worth it. If you are in the middle of something right now, something that feels wrong in the off-center way that may be not naming itself yet, start the document. Date everything. Save everything. Trust your body. And wait until you have enough that no one can tell you the problem was inside you. Because it is not. It never was. I want to tell you about the specific moment the divorce became real to me. Not the signing of the documents. Not the Friday confrontation. Not even the 2 text messages in discovery. The moment it became real was at Eli's 2nd birthday party. We had agreed before the divorce was final that we would handle his birthday together for his sake. Ryan arrived with a gift and a cake he had ordered from Eli's favorite bakery. He knew the bakery because I had always taken Eli there. He had come into the shared folder in our phones and found the name. I saw him do that, and I did not say anything because we were in front of our son. And our son was wearing a paper crown and eating the cake with both hands, and he did not need to know any of this. Ryan and I stood side by side in our kitchen that had once been our kitchen and watched our son eat cake. And Ryan said he looks really good. I said he is really good. Ryan said you are doing a great job with him. I said thank you. We stood there for a moment more, and then Eli held up a fistful of frosting and said, "Dada have some," and Ryan took it from his hand and ate it, and Eli shrieked with delight. And that was the most painful moment. Not because it was terrible, because it was so completely ordinary, because it looked exactly like a birthday, and it was a birthday, just a different shape of one than I had planned for. I went to the bathroom and stood at the sink for 2 minutes. Then I went back out. I smiled at Eli. I thanked Ryan for the cake. I watched Eli open his presents with the particular ferocity of a 2-year-old who does not understand wrapping paper is not the gift. And when Ryan left, I locked the door and sat on the kitchen floor next to Eli's torn wrapping paper, and I said out loud to nobody, "I am going to be okay." Not a question. A statement. I was going to be okay. I am okay. I am better than okay. I am in my own kitchen with my spreadsheet and my court order and my son who says, "Mummy, all better now." And I am building something real from a cleared space, and the table is mine, and the room is mine, and the perception is mine. All mine. Nobody is managing it, and I will never let anyone manage it again.